Well, young children, in case you didn't know this, I think you all know, young children can be a lot of fun, right? Just being around them can bring joy. They have an innocence about them. So many things that we take for granted are new to them. They still fill them with wonder and joy and surprise. Our granddaughter Haley is that way. Simple things always seem to delight her. At a family gathering after playing a game of kickball, you might hear Haley say, "That's the most fun I ever had." Or a few years back when we were still reading bedtime stories to her, she might say something like, "That is the best book. I love it." One evening when she was over, I was grilling some hamburgers. We sat down for dinner. Haley took one bite and declared, "These are the best hamburgers ever. They're so juicy." Simple things in life fill that girl with joy. One thing recently that did not fill me with joy was all the unpacking we've been doing. We're just about done now. But that first morning, when we got up to find ourselves surrounded by all those boxes, I was not looking forward to the day ahead. I was not excited about that at all. Then I remembered another day from just a few years back. It was a Sunday evening. Haley and 4 of our other grandchildren were over. They'd been with us for several days, and we'd had a lot of fun. And they were staying one more day. And I didn't know if I was up to keeping all 5 grandkids one more day. I told Karen I kind of needed a break. I'd been having fun, but Monday was my day off. I had some other things I was hoping I'd be able to do. So at that moment, as I was speaking with Karen, I wasn't really looking forward to Monday. There's no doubt I was going to make the best of it, but I wasn't sure there's going to be a whole lot to make the best of. Well, Monday morning arrived and the kids slept in. So surprisingly, the day started off with peace and quiet. By late morning, they were all playing out in front of the house. I was out there with them, and then it started to rain. Just a few drops at first. They were big, and they were cold. The kids took off running for the garage. Then Haley, who was still standing in the driveway, asked, "Can we play in the rain, Grandpa? Can we run around in our swimsuits?" Before I could answer, as the others started, "Yeah, can we play in the rain?" I said, "Sure." A couple of minutes later, they were all out there in their swimsuits, in the rain, riding bikes, running up and down the street, laughing, splashing, yelling. It went on for quite a while. Suddenly, the bottom dropped out. It didn't get real dark, but it started raining hard. In no time, water was running down the side of the streets. It was filling the gutters. It was moving quickly. It was deep. And the kids just were kicking and splashing and yelling and laughing. Somewhere in the midst of all this fun, Haley, as she rode her bike with a huge smile on her face, began saying, "This is the best day ever. This is the best day ever." She said it over and over again. Pretty soon all the kids were saying it. "This is the best day ever." So we stayed out and we played in the rain. Karen came out obviously and got some pictures. She actually has some videos she could show you later of that day. We played until it stopped raining. And the kids just laughed and played and had the best time. At some point during all of that fun, my mind went back to the conversation I'd had with Karen the evening before. And to the way I was dreading Monday morning. As it turned out, I was totally wrong about the day. Before we sat down for lunch that Monday morning, it was the best day ever. That got my attention. God grabbed my attention during that rainstorm. And I began to think. I wondered, how often do people prepare themselves for disappointment? Tomorrow's going to be a lousy day. I wish I could just wake up on Tuesday. Or they think, "Oh no, the boss has called me into her office. What have I done? I guess I'm going to get fired." When all the boss really wants to do is tell her how much he appreciates her hard work. Students might anxiously say, I'm so scared. I've got a big test tomorrow. I've been studying and studying, but I just know I'm going to fail. Or maybe some of you have felt like this. Great. My buddy's wedding is this weekend. I'm the best man. I've got to get up and make a speech. I'm going to look so stupid getting up there in front of everybody. I just don't know what to say. How often do you anticipate something less than the best? Brought on by your fears, your doubts, and your worries. How often do your dismal expectations become self-fulfilling prophecies? How often is your life so much less than it could be? I want you to think about that today, and the 23rd Psalm is going to help us do that. I'll be reading Psalm 23. I invite you to stand as you're able as I read the psalm, and please follow along. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He lets me rest in grassy meadows. He leads me to restful waters. He keeps me alive. He guides me in proper paths for the sake of his good name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no danger because you're with me. Your rod and your staff, they protect me. You set a table for me right in front of my enemies. You bathe my head in oil. My cup is so full, it spills over. Yes, goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the Lord's house as long as I live. This is the word of the Lord. Please be seated. King David, who wrote the 23rd Psalm, is someone who listened to and followed God far more often than not. He had a complete trust in God. He knew life lived with and for God lacked nothing. The words of Psalm 23 make this very clear. David had no doubt it was God who provided everything necessary for life. So to him, God was like a good shepherd who led him to graze in grassy, fertile, lush meadows and to clear, clean, gently flowing waters for something to drink. David was certain God would always lead him to and lead him along the best possible paths. If you know much about King David's life, you know he also had some dark days. When he was a young warrior living in King Saul's house, Saul tried to kill him many times, but God always protected David. Eventually, it became obvious to David that he had nothing to fear. Not anywhere, not anytime, not from anyone. Because God was with him everywhere all the time, even during his most difficult moments, even as he struggled through the darkest valleys of life. On more than one occasion, David found himself surrounded by enemies. By all appearances, he had no way out. But God always came through. God always protected him and provided for him with such abundance, he had much more than he needed. The way David put it, God filled his cup so full, it was constantly spilling over. And in this last verse of Psalm 23, David's words let us know how good he felt when he lived a life of faithfulness. That's when he could see God at work in his life, in every aspect of his life, because so many good things were happening. The way David expressed it was goodness and faithful love were pursuing him. They were chasing him down and blessing him wherever he went. And he knew this was going to continue as long as he had life. Now that's a good way to look at life. David was filled with optimism and enthusiasm. I wonder how many times David said, "This is the best day ever." It may have started when he was a small boy shepherding his father's sheep. Imagine the first time he killed a bear or a lion with his bare hands. He had quite a story to tell over dinner that night, didn't he? That must have been the best day ever. But then young David went out to battle for Israel once. He killed a giant warrior named Goliath. He saved Israel from disgrace and defeat. That must have been the best day ever. What about the day David, at the age of 30, became the king of all Israel? With all that power, the mighty army at his disposal, the riches and the honor and the respect that came with the position. That must have been the best day ever. Of course, we can't forget the day David led a huge parade into the city of Jerusalem. The Ark of the Covenant was being brought into the city. It was an enormous celebration. David was so excited. He was so thrilled to be able to do that for God that he danced with all his might in front of everybody in the city. You know, that must have been the best day ever. When was the last time you had the best day ever? Would you like to have another best day ever? Depending on how you look at life, you just might have many, many more best days ever. When people today relate to God the way David did, like a good shepherd who's there to provide for us and protect us, when we look at God that way, when we know that God walks with us through the darkest valleys of life, when we really know this, when we really believe this, it affects the way we look at each new day. When we commit to living a life of faithfulness because of a deep trust in God, we experience so many good things. We understand what it means to feel as though we're being chased down and blessed by goodness and God's faithful love, night and day for as long as we live. Looking at life this way, having this perspective on life, takes a childlike attitude, like Haley's. It requires a childlike trust in God. The Bible in Matthew 18 tells us we need to change and become like children to enter the kingdom of heaven. This is what that's all about, what I'm talking about right now. When we have a childlike trust in God, we can experience the kingdom of heaven. We can live life the way it's intended to be lived right now and forever. Earlier I mentioned the evening Haley was over and the way she bit into one of the hamburgers I grilled and said, "These are the best hamburgers ever." At that moment I realized she had great taste, an incredible understanding of the finer points of grilled meat, a child prodigy in the culinary arts. Well, maybe not, but when she bit into that hamburger and said, "This is the best hamburger ever," and then she thanked me, that made me feel so good. To hear her express such pleasure, to hear her express such gratitude for something I provided, it touched my heart. It filled me with joy. And then on that Monday out in the rain, when Haley said, "This is the best day ever," I felt it again right here. I felt so good knowing she had what she considered to be her best day of her life while she was with me, under my care. Her expression of joy was such a blessing to me. And I thought about that too. And I wondered, do I express my joy, my gratitude to our Father in heaven often enough? God provides everything I have. Every day I live, every breath I take, every beat of my heart, every hamburger I eat, it's all under His loving care. So how would God feel if I expressed great pleasure and joy for everything God gives and does for me all the time? And think about this. Imagine the joy that God would feel. Imagine the joy that would fill the heavens if all God's children, if all of us expressed our joy and gratitude and thanksgiving and praises to God for all the things he does for all of us all the time. We'd be a constant source of joy and blessing for God. And we'd be changed. Our prayer lives would be changed for sure. If we expressed our joy-filled gratitude to God for everything all the time, that means we'd be praying all the time. We'd never be able to pray enough. Our worship would change too. We'd still enjoy coming here to bask in God's love and listen for his message to us. But receiving during worship would never be enough again. Like never before. We'd find ourselves pouring out thanksgiving and praise to God, and we find ourselves pouring out our love for God. We wouldn't be able to stop. Can you imagine the difference that would make? It would dramatically change our relationship with God and ultimately change our lives completely. And it would make a huge difference in the life of this church. The church would no doubt have a much greater impact on this community. Not only would people in this community benefit from our ministries, but they'd see that the people at First United Methodist Nederland are people who have a faith that's real, a faith that's authentic. They'd realize we have the type of faith, the closeness to God that they long for. And they'd come to us, to be with us, to get what we have. They'd worship with us. They'd learn and grow with us in small groups. They'd serve with us. And in the process, they'd become better acquainted with our God of love. The God David trusted completely. The God who can take a rainy day and turn it into the best day ever. I want today to be my best day ever. I want tomorrow to be my best day ever. I want to have a whole lot more best days ever. And so do you. So do you. And so do people all around this world. We have no need to fear or dread tomorrow. With God, it just might be the best day ever. Amen.